What's up, YouTube? Mr. Llama C here, and today we're going to talk about the Amazon and some changes that I believe would make the Amazon a little bit more fun and add a little bit more variety to the Amazon and Amazon builds overall. Bring some more into the end game, make them a little bit more viable in the end game, things like that. Maybe shake up the meta a little bit. Because again, with 2.4, I think all of us were hoping we'd see a little bit more of changes there. And, this is kind of maybe some ways that we can. So once again, these are just my ideas. I am not a developer at Blizzard. I do not get my ideas all implemented at Blizzard. There's been a lot of stuff I've requested and a lot that has not changed or has changed in the reverse way or anything. So, it is just what it is. But like I say, these are my thoughts and my opinions and my feelings because I'm a real human being. And you're all entitled to yours as well. So, with that being said, let us dive into some changes that I personally would like to see. Now, the first one is, let's just go over here to Impale. Impale just needs to be faster. It just is so slow in the hit that it just is miserable. And I mean, I really like the, let me see if I can put on something to get Impale. Let's just fix this. I really like Fend. Fend actually got a massive boost and was really cool and was super fun. But Impale just kind of got destroyed, it feels like, and just is not in a good spot at all. And we can go out here and try and show it because it's just like, I mean, just that speed. It's just like, oh my god, you can't have anything. You get like one attack a second right now with Impale. The damage is cool. I like that they added the slow on it. That's cool. All of that stuff. But man, does it need some speed to it. So I would just speed it up. I mean, 2 to 3 times faster probably. I don't even know. It needs a lot of testing. Because again, it's just like you can have single target things in this game, but if it's not actually fast enough, then it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work on Diablo 2. So that's what I would change there. And of course, the thing that we have to bring up, does Lightning Fury need a nerf? I don't know. I mean, if we're bringing it up, and once again, I talked about it in the Sorceress and the Paladin video with the Hammered and the Blizzard Sorceress, everybody sits there and says, Lightning Fury and Blizzsource and Hammerden are the strongest characters in the game. They can murder players 8 stuff. They can clear everything. You don't even have to have good gear. You can literally use white javelins and run into the cow level and destroy everything with this skill. Does it need to be nerfed? And their main idea is we need to shake the meta up. But if you bring everything up to the point of Lightning Fury, which is doing like hundreds of thousands of damage with the bolts and all of this stuff, it's like now it's just getting ridiculous and crazy, right? Now you're just getting into insane amounts of damage. I mean, whatever the actual damage is. I don't know the max Lightning Fury damage that you actually achieve. I haven't looked that up. But because somebody's going to be like, actually, it's this amount, and he's lying, so he knows nothing. It's like, I haven't looked it up. I know it's a lot. It is a very high number of damages that come out there, and if everything did the same amount of damage as Lightning Fury, I think this game would be boring. So But at the same time, I also want there to be endgame shakeup. I want there to be, different builds that are better in different ways and have some of that ability. Yeah. My mods say I've done the math. Lightning Fury can do 250k screen damage without supplemental damage sources accounted for against cows, assuming there's max targets on screen, and it pierces 5 times. There you go. That seems a little high. I know that there's been play and mods where they nerf it down, and it still does a lot of damage. So, I pose the question to you. Do you think it does need some damage drop? Because to me, I say I like the idea of a meta shakeup. I like the idea of other skills and other characters being more viable in that late game and for this next season, all of that stuff to be fun. But I don't want things doing 250,000 damage from other sources. I want there to be... I'd rather we see more of these builds, not from giant power creep to get there, right? So, once again, just a question I am posing to everybody. That is all. I'm not saying it needs to happen. I don't have the power to direct Blizzard to make it happen. I am just throwing the question out there to you all, and I'll probably create some survey, honestly, for all of that stuff to get more feedback, because I'm curious how everybody feels on it. Moving on, honestly, I think the passive and magic tree is pretty decent. I think there's some bugs right now with dodge, avoid, evade, so maybe fixing those bugs up. But otherwise, I think the passive tree is pretty decent where it's at. Now, getting into bow and crossbow, I think there's actually a lot that can be done here, because I'm a fan of archers, rangers, that style of character, just anybody who uses a bow. I've always loved it in every game I've played, and I just feel like there's a little bit more that can be done, right? So the first thing is Emulation Arrow has this casting delay of 1 second, and it just really makes it difficult to use Emulation Arrow. It just becomes one of those things where that's your speed. And yes, you get to kind of build up your flame a little bit with it, which is cool and whatever. But this is your speed on it. And it just is a little too slow. So I would either A, just remove that completely, or drop it down to like 0.4 seconds or something like that. I think Emulation Arrow could be a really fun endgame skill, but with that cast delay, I think it really just, it doesn't quite have enough going for it. So you're constantly having to either set it to like immolation and exploding. Let me put these like this. And you're just doing like shoot off an immolation, shoot and exploding, shoot off an immolation, shoot and exploding, shoot, like you're having to constantly bounce back and forth between how you shoot them just to make sure that you can get all the shots off. Something like that, maybe. I mean, it's just a little icky in its use right now, and I just don't like where it sits at all. I mean, again, you could kind of maybe do like immolation plus freezing arrows, but you're still having to like one then the other, one then the other. So it's just not in a good spot where it is. Now, are they maybe doing it for graphical load or something? Because the fire is actually a decent size and they don't want too much fire on the screen and all of that. Maybe, but again, the skill just doesn't quite feel really good with that 1 second cast delay. I think it needs to be changed. The next thing I would do is I would change up Multishot. I think late game, it works out fine. I think Multishot works totally great in the late game when I run around with my like souped up, super expensive, 120, 45 helm and all of the crazy things that I've jammed into the character. And I have my faith going and whatever. Multishot is fantastic and the bow is actually really fun to farm with. But early on, I think it just runs into a lot of issues. One, the mana cost I think is too high. So you can't really be putting a lot of points in it early on to get all these split arrows because the mana cost gets really high and you just don't quite have that mana, especially on the Amazon early. And you aren't doing enough damage to get enough mana steal where it's actually doing stuff. But of course, second, you have this minus 25% weapon damage. And I think a lot of this issue comes from a different issue, which is a lot of weapons never got buffed despite monster HP getting buffed. And so you just run into the massive issue of there's just not enough damage there. So you're sitting there and you're shooting off these multi-shots, but again, there's just no damage. So it's just costing a ton of mana. And you have the attack rating as well that you're trying to deal with. And it's just, you know, obviously right now I'm not going to do anything because I'm just like shooting with whatever. Oh, I'm probably going to die. But it just doesn't do a lot until you really stack it up. So I think there needs to be a lower mana cost, at least especially in the earlier levels for it. But even later on, I think it'd be okay. And then I think changing up the damage would help it. And it's because, you know, when you get to one of the most expensive tunes, it plays decently and is really fun and all of that. But anytime before you get to your kind of couple endgame bows, everything before that kind of sucks. You have like Wind Force, Faith, and you can maybe make like a Bariza work with Strafe, or you can do, you know, a Gold Strike or something and up it, and it'll be like, okay. But everything in between and everything below that just doesn't, it's just all underwhelming. And I think a physical boson would be really fun. So I think having that sort of boost in there could be nice. And honestly, maybe even a boost to attack rating could be kind of nice. Though, I mean, you do have, you know, your penetrate to kind of help that. But again, giving some attack rating boost to more characters and more of these skills, especially the physical skills, I think would really improve just kind of a lot of builds. And improve them not just in the endgame, but along the way would be fun. Further on, I think Guided Arrow needs a little bit more. My thought is maybe just an increase to damage. Now, a lot of people will probably say, well, PvP, that's going to wreck that. And maybe that's true. So maybe that's a poor idea. I don't really know how Guided Arrow currently is in PvP. A lot of people also want the piercing back that it used to have, where it could go back and forth. But maybe you just implement it just like what Warren said in PVM. It can't pierce back and forth in PvP, but in PVM, you allow it to do that. Because single target for physical bow is actually pretty poor. Just for the boson overall, single target kind of sucks. So if you could have that like piercing back and forth with the guided arrows like you had before in PVM, something like that, you can kind of stack up more of those guided arrow hits. And I think that would be really fun to do. And again, you can also, yes, just like that, you can also adjust the damage in PvP for anything. So you can always, you know, damage versus player is always different. So in PVM, it can still be really nice. So my thought is increase damage on guided arrow, at least PVM wise, and then allow for that pierce nature to come back to it. I think it's such a fun skill. And I used to love guided arrow way back in the day. And now it's just like so sad, you know. And again, guided arrows kind of lost its way. It's not used anymore. And bosons have kind of lost any of their like single target really. So I think that could be something to really help boost it there. Because, you know, currently it's just a small damage boost and it really doesn't do a lot. It just has its always hit, but you know, yeah, guided arrows lost its way. I thought that was cute. So I would do that. Now, the next thing I would do, or the last thing that I would do, and I kind of talked about this before, is just buffing bows, buffing unique bows so that they just do more damage. There's so many unique bows that are just like 8 to 18 physical damage. And it's like, what can anybody do with 8 to 18 physical damage at level like 27? You know, it just does nothing at all. So all of those bows instantly just go in the trash. And I think that's just true for all the bows and crossbows. So not a darn thing is the right answer. Giving those bows much more damage could actually potentially make them viable in some ways there. So I think really taking a look at all the unique bows and crossbows that exist and readjusting those values could be just helpful overall. So with that being said, those are the changes I would make to the Amazon. I think it could really open up some more viable paths for your bosons right there. And, you know, maybe there's some change to the spears to increase impale, make impale more of a thing, like offend, impale, jabs on some capacity. I don't know. I just like to see more stuff there. And yeah, so would love to hear your thoughts down below. That's what I'm thinking. Don't forget to like and subscribe, everybody. Peace, YouTube.